Just because something bad happened to me as a kid, and just because I didn't have information as to who my dad was, my father was, and just because I didn't feel a certain way, doesn't mean it was the wrong way to feel. You don't have to allow the outside world or media, especially media that is completely manipulative, to determine how you feel. You know how you feel. Hi, everyone. Welcome to All About the Joy. I am Carmen Lisette, your host, and this is Carmen Talk. When I was growing up, there were a lot of talk shows, and they were different than the talk shows today. But Oprah Winfrey, of course, was one of the biggest ones, and everybody would watch her show. But before her show would air, there were other shows. And I don't remember which one came first, but there was Phil Donahue, who also had a talk show, and he was kind of this mild-mannered kind of gentleman who kind of did the same thing Oprah did. And then there was a woman, I don't know if she was before or after his show, but the show was Sally Jessica Raphael. And all I really remember about her was she was this white woman with big red glasses, like the frames were really huge, and she seemed pleasant enough. And the reason why her show stuck with me so much is because she would do these episodes where she would bring somebody on, some young person onto the show, and they would talk about not having a certain parent. And the ones that would affect me the most are the ones that didn't have fathers. And I think the one I remember most is Chili from TLC. She came on the show and she was talking about it, but it's such a mash of those stories. I don't know if this is Chili's story or just a mash of all of them. And that's not really the point. But the person would come on and Sally Jessica Raphael would say to them, "Tell us about your story." And the person would be like, "Well, I grew up and I didn't know who my father was. And I don't know if he loved me. And I don't," they would say all of these things that we would just connect to, right? While you're watching it, you would feel for this person. And they would say something, to the effect of, "I don't know why my mother doesn't want me to have a relationship with him." And so you could tell there was turmoil and there was sadness and there was something. And then, of course, Sally Jessica Raphael would bring out the father unexpectedly and they would hug and they would cry. And it was so dramatic. And I always hated that part. And I'll tell you why. One of the things that I would hate about the person, not really hate, but I would not like about hearing this story is the person would inevitably be, who is sitting there talking about how they don't know their mother or their father or their sibling or whatever, would be sitting there talking about how, because I don't know who my father is, I don't know who I am. They would always say this thing. And that would always push me out of the story. So for those of you who don't know, I grew up not knowing who my father was. My mom died when I was really young. She told me that she would tell me when I was 16 years old, the one or two times I asked, because the first time she said she would tell me when I was 16. The second time it was like, don't ask again. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, my mom passed away way before that. I was 11 when she passed away, and she didn't tell anybody anything about my father. And so I never had an identity crisis. I never had a feeling like I wasn't whole because I didn't have a father figure. That never was my experience. And yet, as I was watching all of these people, one after the other, come on to the Sally Jessica Raphael show, I started thinking, like, is there something wrong with me? I don't feel like I don't know who I am. I mean, I didn't know what other part of the world my ethnicity was from. I looked very different than my mom. I didn't look like my mom at all. And I don't have relatives that I look like either that are blood related, supposedly. So I just didn't have a grasp of, that other side of me, but it never made me feel like I wasn't a complete person. And so I would watch these people on this show and I would think there's something wrong with me because I didn't feel that way. And I was like, and I'd start doubting myself, right? I'd start questioning, like, am I doing life wrong or whatever, right? Am I a bad person? Cause I don't miss my father that way. I can't, and I always used to say this when I was younger too, I can't miss something I never had. And I am a whole and complete person, right? I'm Carmen Suarez. Like my last name, Suarez, is my mother's maiden name. I don't have that information either in my birth certificate. So that's my point is I never felt odd or bad or different until I watched this show, this piece of media. And then I started doubting myself. And then I started questioning if I was feeling wrong or bad because I didn't feel a certain way. Like, why wasn't I angry? Why wasn't I upset? Why wasn't I feeling not whole? Why wasn't I feeling like my mother did something bad and wrong to me by not telling me, right? Just because something bad happened to me as a kid, and just because I didn't have information as to who my dad was, my father was, and just because I didn't feel a certain way, doesn't mean it was the wrong way to feel. And it took me a long time to reconcile that, to understand that it was okay. I had enough men in my life or enough women, strong women in my life that even though I was going through the circumstance I was going through as a kid, there were people who were not acting as my father. There were not people who were trying to be my father, but they were male figures who made me understand that I was a good person, a good kid, a good human being, and that I was whole and complete and that I was okay. Me not having a dad or me not having what everybody else had growing up, me not having a mom didn't make me angry or upset or pained or less than. And I am not trying to take away from anyone else's experience because it's all very different, right? Everybody has a different backstory and a different understanding of their circumstance. So I'm not trying to dismiss people who may feel that way. What I'm saying is that when you're feeling a certain way and you're presented with information, you don't have to now all of a sudden start to be angry. You don't have to allow the outside world or media, especially media that is completely manipulated and manipulative, to determine how you feel. You know how you feel. I started going down that rabbit hole like, yeah, why I should be angry, right? I should be upset. Like, why didn't she tell me? Oh my God, how could she not know that this? And then I was like, whoa, like my mother who loved me from all I've been told, because I don't really remember that much, but I would have never done anything to hurt me on purpose. My mom's intention was not to do anything to make my life harder. That was not her pure intention ever. And I know that in my soul. I know that. And me not having a father and me not having pains and anger and angst about not having a father didn't change the trajectory of my journey, because I stayed in a place of gratitude and joy and curiosity, right? I've always been curious about who my father was. And I did all the DNA testing and I did all that. So I know what my ethnicity is now, which is an interesting, amazing thing about technology. But I'm still not angry at him. And I wrote an entire book about all the people that intervened in my life. The name of the book is Canela, which means cinnamon, which is the color of my skin. And the whole thorough line through that book is me talking to a father I never knew. That's who I'm talking to. For those of you who haven't read the book, spoiler alert. But the way I created this book because it wasn't intentionally supposed to be a book. I made it like I had finally found out who he was and he was dead and I had found his grave and I was sitting at the grave explaining to him my entire life, at least up until I graduated from high school. So the whole book, there were these moments where I'm talking to the audience and actually I'm talking to my father. And anybody who knows me knows that everything about fathers and daughters or fathers and sons makes me so happy. You know, it's always made me like, there's a song by Luther Vandross, I believe, and it's Dance with My Father. I could cry thinking about it right now. I love that song because I dream about that idea. Like if you listen to the lyrics, it's the idea that my mom would be happy dancing with whoever the man was that she was with and that I was born, you know, like, or another one was, I remember Tim Russert, who, for those of you who don't know who Tim Russert was, he was an amazing newscaster, a news person, journalist. And I think forget what the show, he did Meet the Press. That's the name of the show that he used to anchor. And I think it was like in 2002 or 2004, he did a book called like Big Russ and Me. And it was a book about him and his father. And I remember reading that book and I was like, oh my God, you know, like one of my favorite movies, Field of Dreams, which people make the mistake of thinking it's a baseball movie, is one of my favorite movies for so many reasons. But the biggest reason is, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Field of Dreams, is he plays catch with his father at the end. And I love that. I have always been able to be positive about my circumstance. I have always been able to see the joy, to walk through the other side of whatever hell you think you're walking in, get to the other side and find the light, find the joy, find the positivity. And why am I bringing this up? Why am I talking about this so much? I think because my story wouldn't happen today if I was the 11-year-old kid who lost their mom and had no father. The story that happened would not happen today because we have become a country and a people who are angst, who are selfish and inconsiderate. We wouldn't want to take in an 11-year-old brown kid who's on the streets. We wouldn't do that. Now, I know as you're listening to this, you're going, I would, of course I would, right? That's what but we're watching that today. We're watching people, and we've seen this happen over and over again. And what we're doing is we're believing that our circumstance that we find ourselves in, whether it's we don't have enough money, we don't have the right job, we don't have the right connections, instead of being okay in that circumstance and trying to find our way through it to get to the other side of it, we've decided instead to blame people for our circumstance. So instead of me being able to say, I am okay, I don't know who my father is, but I am a whole and complete person anyways, and I'm going to try to get through this journey in my life. And trust me, as I say that, it wasn't that grand of a thing. I was a kid after all, but it is the ability to see that you are in a situation and all you can do is choose to move forward. But if I didn't do that and instead started blaming people, if I started letting a show like Sally Jessica Raphael influenced me in such a way that I changed the trajectory of who I was and instead started being angry at my mother and angry at the people who let me down and angry at everybody who didn't know who my father was or didn't tell me, or angry at whatever, God or whatever it is, that would have been a very different human being. I would have not been the child I was, the teenager I became, the young adult I was, and now the person I am today. Because I would have let the idea of pain and anger and hatred take over my life as opposed to taking responsibility for the cards that I've been dealt and working through it anyways, and finding grace in the people that did walk through, and finding joy in the circumstances I had the ability to be joyful about. We have now become, as people in this country of the United States, so mired in TikTok videos and shorts and Instagram. And I know my friend Andrea and my co-host on Culture and Consequences watching this going, exactly, I hate social media. And that's not what I'm talking about. I don't hate social media and I love technology. But what is true is that we haven't learned how to use it, because what we've allowed it to do is influence who we are, believe everything everybody says, and then change the trajectory of who we can be. Because it's so much easier to be angry and to hate and to blame someone else, anyone else, immigrants, anybody who's brown, anybody who's poor. They have us believing that our anger is towards people who come to this country are the problem. That the reason why my eggs are high or my rent is too high or I can't get the job I want is because immigrants are stealing my job. Jobs that we'd never want to do. That's what they have us believing. They don't have us understanding fully and completely that the real problem is that corporations and big time companies that are making tons and tons of money are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not doing the work they're supposed to be doing in order for all of us to have a great society. And that's not about handouts. That's not about giving away free stuff. That's not about me not believing in capitalism. I do. I don't love capitalism, but I can see how it could work. But what it is saying is that if I expect my neighbors to have a high bar and I expect them to have standards as to how they behave and how they work and function in society, I have that same angst and feeling towards corporations. I want you, corporations and billionaires, I want you to do right by people. I want you to do the right thing and make sure you're not trying to stir up this weird pot so that you can keep making more and more money, so that you can keep getting more and more clicks and more profit at the expense of my good neighbors and my good friends. All anybody wants, all any human being wants around the world, not just coming to the United States, but around the world, is to be able to eat, to have shelter, and to be loved. That's all anybody wants. It is basic. And the idea that we have allowed people to influence the trajectory of who we are as human beings breaks my heart. The amount of hatred, the amount of bad information that is influencing your choices as to who to vote for or who to love or who to accept or who to allow to be here breaks my complete soul. My story would not happen if it happened today. And I know that to be true, and it breaks my heart because my story, the story I wrote in Canela, is about the neighborhood coming out, people from all walks of life making sure I didn't fall through the cracks. Poor Black kid with no parents. All of these people came out of the woodwork to make sure at different times. And here's the thing. It wasn't like they had a committee meeting. It wasn't like they all got together and said, you know what, they did. It's not what happened. It was a time where we had compassion and love for each other. It was a time when somebody was hurting, when a child was hurting, we did our due diligence. I am still in touch with my 7th grade teacher to this day. I am still in touch with so many of the people I wrote about in that book who walked me through. And I'll always be grateful to them. And some of them I give way too much credit to. There's no doubt about it. Like, I also understand that I was a pretty smart kid. But here's the thing. Most kids are. I believe most people are good and decent human beings. But I also know that life is hard. It is really, really hard. And sometimes it really is easier to think, those damn immigrants, they're the reason why. They're the problem. They're the ones. It's them. That's why I'm in pain. Or that's why my son is a drug addict. Or that's why this one. You can come up with all the reasons once you find that boogeyman. Once you find that person to blame and hate. Hate is powerful. It's such a powerful drug. You have no idea. And it's hard to fight against it. That's why so many Christians are having this weird problem right now, because on the one hand, you're justifying, without even realizing, you're justifying everything you don't believe in. Because hate is so powerful. It twists you into like pretzels to try to understand, like you're conforming arguments and excuses for things that are so easy to see. You can so easily see them, and I know you can. But to do that would be to admit that you made a mistake. And here's the thing. This is a tough time for everybody. I'm doing this Carmen talk because I feel the need to share that my heart is broken about this country. And I am well aware that I am absolutely nobody. I do my shows. I will continue to share my piece because this is my way of trying to bring joy to other people. This is my way of helping people with what I know, with what I learned. These are the gifts that I was born with, and I am trying to share them to the best of my ability. And during this time period in the United States, while we are going through this pain and through this heartache, I am also very well aware that I might be able to get through just one person and to say to you, please stop. Stop going down the rabbit hole. Stop it. You can actually come back to where you used to be, and you can walk through whatever you need to walk through and not be a person filled with so much hate and so much anger and all the whataboutisms. Well, what about this? What about? Stop. Be a good person. Be a good and decent person. Don't just talk the talk. Don't just spit out Bible verses or wisdom notes from this and that. Actually become a compassionate, loving, listening person. Actually become the person you want to be in the world. Treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself. And here's the last thing I'll say. We can all bring our cultures and who we are to this moment in time and be magnificent. Be better because we know people of different cultures. I was saying this, again, I've said it like 2 or 3 times now in the past week, but this idea, when I was growing up, I remember one of the biggest arguments was this idea that like, I would fight with people that we were not a melting pot. We were like a salad, right? So when I was growing up, we used to say, is America a melting pot, right? Where everybody from different cultures. So if you were Irish or if you were African-American or you were Latino, that we would all meld together and, make one, I don't know, mishmash of soup or something, right? And I would always say, because I always believed this, like, no, we're more like a salad, right? Like I'm a tomato and you're a lettuce and you're onion or whatever. And together we make this great meal, this great salad. Like we're all still one unified meal, but we're all very distinct and beautiful. And we contribute in different ways. That's the country I want. That's the country I believe in. That's the people I still believe in. It's killing me, but I still believe in the best of who we can be. I really, really do. I still believe that the country, the United States of America, not the blue country, not the red country, but the United States of America, just stealing a little bit from President Barack Obama. I think he was senator then when he did that speech, but it's a beautiful speech, right? We were all so excited to hear that speech because it was true. We were not a red America. We were not a blue America. We were the United States of America. And we need to get back there. We need to get back there. So, in summary, stop letting other people influence what you know to be true. That really is the gist of this whole conversation. You are okay. You are okay as a human being. You will be okay as a human being. You don't have to hate other people to walk through this life. And I have to tell you, living in that kind of hate is going to make for a miserable life. Having so much anger and pain keeps you stuck. But when you choose joy, when you choose to walk in grace, it's not easier, completely easier, but it feels better because you work through your issues, you work through your problems. And you don't have all this hate towards other people. I hope that helps. I hope that helps one person. I hope it also makes people understand why I do the show I do and why I will continue to always share my piece, whether that's in speaking events or writing my second book, the next book that I'm working on right now, or doing these shows that we do every week, Culture and Consequence, the Private Lounge, and the Friday Night Lives. Like, I want you to understand what it is I'm doing and what I'm trying to do so that you can also be a part of this neighborhood, be part of this community in a really authentic and awesome way, right? Not just passerby. And I do really believe this, and I wish this for everyone. First of all, this is going to be airing right before the Super Bowl, so I hope everyone will enjoy the Super Bowl, regardless of who you're cheering for. I'm originally from Boston, that's all I'll say. But really, Bad Bunny is going to be doing the halftime show. And I'm excited for so many reasons because, again, the other thing I love about the United States is that we've always been curious and we've always had so many different cultures. The salad, remember the salad bowl? And the thing about Puerto Rico that is wonderful is we should know more about it. And we are about to get the opportunity, just like we know about Texas and just like we know about Kansas and just like we know about Minneapolis or, Minnesota or Chicago, Illinois or Los Angeles, California. Now we're going to learn about Puerto Rico. And we should definitely know our country and all of its lovely flavors. And yeah, I could go on, but I won't. So remember, at the end of the day, it really is all about the joy. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by All About the Joy. Be better and stay beautiful, folks. Have a sweet day.